Hello, good evening. Sorry for the little delay. Of course, we always have these wonderful moments of technology challenge. So I'm so glad that you're here, and I am hoping that you are hearing this all well. And I certainly invite you to say hello in the chat. I'm Dr. Rhoberta Shaler, the Relationship Help Doctor, and we're going to talk about help for toxic relationships as we usually do every Monday at this time. And so it's an important consideration tonight. We're going to talk about the trials and tribulations of co-parenting, especially with a narcissistic hijackal. And I know that that's a topic of some concern for many, many people because you didn't have an easy time in the relationship, and it doesn't make it any easier when you end the relationship. In fact, sometimes it can make it worse. So hello, Anne. I'm excited for the show too. I'm glad to see you here. And as usual, please feel free to post your questions or your thoughts in the chat. Let me know you're here. Keep that going so that I know that you're there. And so important to understand what these hijackals are. Of course, that's my trademarked word for them. But they're the relentlessly difficult people in life. And my definition for them is that hijackals are people who hijack relationships for their own purposes and then relentlessly scavenge them for power, status, and control. And that's a very broad definition, but it will certainly talk about all the traits that a narcissist, a borderline personality disordered person, an antisocial psychopath, sociopath kind of person, or a histrionic, the drama kings and queens of our lives. These are the patterns, traits, and cycles that they have. So tonight we're actually talking about what happens when you've already ended the relationship and you're going to co-parent with the people that you didn't get along with anyway, and now they want to have more and more power. So remember that a hijackal's primary need in every interaction, every single time, their need is to win. And win means they need to have power over the situation. Whatever it takes to win in the moment is what's important to them. The win in the moment. They're much more a battle person than they are a war person, although, of course, they think that if you win every battle, then you win the war. But they are very, very concerned in the moment that they're winning, and they're calibrating that at all times. So if you've had a hijackal in your life, then you know that they're always trying to find the angle to win. They need to be right. And they'll twist things terribly. They'll make things up. They'll lie. They'll deceive. And then, of course, they do other lovely things like betray and manipulate and seduce and exploit. And that makes life even more difficult. So if you've had a hijackal in your life, maybe you had a hijackal parent and then you attracted a hijackal partner and then you wanted to leave the hijackal partner behind and you end up still in relationship with them. Or maybe you were completely sideswiped by a hijackal and you really, really, really believed that you would be able to influence them positively. And so you continued to stay in the relationship. You were hooked on the hope that the person that you met would be the person that you would be able to nurture and find again. And that's a very, very natural thing to believe. Unfortunately, it's not true, because hijackals don't believe there's anything wrong with them. They have to believe that they're flawless. They take no responsibility for anything. They're never accountable. And that makes life very, very difficult when you do decide to leave them and you have children. So please do use the chat. Remember, everything that I say here today cannot be construed as any therapeutic purpose, but because I don't know you. I can give you broad strokes. I can give you general ideas of what happens in most cases. And if you're very specific in what you put in the chat, I can be a little more specific with how I respond. So please be sure to do that. Feel free to do that. And this whole business of winning. Okay, so we see examples of this around us a lot. It looks like this. On one day to win, I have to say black is white. So I say it. And 20 minutes later, in order to win, I have to say black is red. And so I say it. And then the person says, but 20 minutes before you said black is white. Now what does a hijackal do? A hijackal says, you don't listen very well, do you? You never pay attention. In fact, it's just like talking to the wall. I don't know why I bother. And that just gaslights you, because they're saying your perception of reality is not accurate, mine is, and I will tell you what your perception of reality should be. So this doesn't stop once we are divorced from a hijackal, once we are co-parenting with a hijackal. The same kind of problem exists. So is there anyone in the room who is co-parenting with a hijackal now, or maybe has completed co-parenting with a hijackal? Because although celebrations, birthdays, Christmases, and weddings and graduations continue to happen after your child has become an adult, you are not having to co-parent with them any longer. You're just having to make do, trying to have decent relationships with them for the rest of your life. So no one co-parenting. All right. Well, it seemed to be a big issue last week, and so I wanted to bring it up. And there was a severe number of questions, and I mean severe because too many people are having to do this these days. The research shows that diagnosed cases are on the rise. Now, most cases are never diagnosed because a hijackal is never going to go for a diagnosis because there's nothing wrong with them. It's all about you. Everything about you is wrong, and everything about them is perfect. So when we're talking about a rise in the number of diagnosed cases, then we know that in the general population it would be much more than that there actually are these people. And that's kind of sad. So it is a bit severe. And after a while, most people decide that they really are not going to put up with this, and they're not going to have their children put up with it in the environment, and they end up being the creator of a divorce, or they don't do it very well, and at least they don't do it before they come to see me, and they do it poorly, and the hijackal discards them, because the hijackal has to be right. So to get rid of their partner, to leave their partner, to tell their partner to leave is a discard. And yes, Anne, you are currently, so you may have questions. So be sure to feel free to ask your questions. If anyone has experience with this or has any questions about co-parenting in particular, but anything else, please do feel free to put it in the chat. And I also take things from the chat and put them into new live streams for another day. So if I don't get to your question in depth today, I will put it into another live stream and we'll talk about it particularly. So things aren't going well with you and your partner. You finally had enough. Maybe you tried everything. Maybe you were discarded. However it happened, you're now living in separate places with your children, going between two places. And what does the hijackal who needs to win need to do here? Well, the hijackal needs to be sure that the hijackal does whatever they can to be the favored parent. Now, I've talked about this many times before, and you've seen the graphics. Remember that you can go to the Facebook group. Just go, not the Facebook group, a Facebook page. Now you go to facebook.com/hijackals. You'll get to a page where I put all the graphics that I make. And on there's a very sad graphic that says to remember that hijackals don't have love to give you. They have uses for you. And this is so true when it comes to their children. You want to believe that they love their children. You want to believe that they have their children's best interest at heart. But in actual fact, in most cases, the hijackal is simply wanting the children and more time with the children so that you will have less and they will achieve the win. And they will do anything in court in order to achieve that win, because they need to look good and they need you to look bad. And it can go all the way along to a hijackal. I've had several of them in my practice who so much wanted to win over the other parent that they would make up stories or twist things or tell total lies and actually report the other parent to Child Protective Services just to get it on the record that this was a bad parent. Now, that doesn't usually go well for the hijackal because there is no evidence. But they do it because they want the win, and they threaten it even if they don't do it. But far too many of them do it and waste the time of Child Protective Services. And every now and again, a hijackal does what? A hijackal gets power over a CPS person who's adjudicating their case, and that person decides that, this hijackal is a pretty good person, and I'm going to give them what they want, and I am going to have a bias against the other person. So every now and again it works poorly too. So it's kind of sad. And so hijackal needs to have the children thinking that they are the better parent. They are the favored parent. So hijackal promises things, often doesn't deliver them, but promises them. You may have been familiar with the line, I know your mother or father won't let you do this, but I will. Okay, I want to be the Disneyland dad or mom. I want to be the one who's the good person, and that makes the other in their eyes look bad. And that's a thing that they do. They'll say that to the children. Now, in every divorce decree in the United States, there is a line that says that there is an agreement and a promise to not in any way say anything bad about the other parent. It's actually there. It's agreed to. And if you look at your divorce decree, you'll see it. But in hijackal language, that is like la 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 la. They are not interested. So they will say whatever they like, and often they say way too much, and it's too wrong. Okay, so any experience with this, and you have experience, is any of this sitting in and settling in and actually true for you? I'd be interested in knowing that, and I'm sure others would too, whether they're listening live right now or listening to the replay. These are important questions. When you get out on your own, and then you have the children, and you have the considerations and any loss or gain that you created in the divorce, and you're settling into these new situations and these new ways of being, and then it becomes emotional warfare with the children as the pieces that are being argued over and fought over, and the emotions are being played. That's very, very difficult. Very difficult. And so you get way more than you ever thought. You wanted relief by getting a divorce, moving out, being the manager of your own home, your own finances, being out from under the fear and being hypervigilant about whether the other person is going to be in a good mood or not, or what they're going to say or do, or how it's going to be manipulated. And then you find that you have all these other considerations now. So here's a few tips. First of all, and I know you've heard this before from me and probably every other person that's ever helped you with this, is that before you ever leave, make sure you have excellent documentation. Write down every last thing that ever went sideways, when it happened, why it happened, what was going on, how long it happened. Just get in the habit of good note-taking. And once you get a divorce, get in the habit of better note-taking, because there are going to be anomalies. what often happens is because the hijackal wanted to win and get 50-50 or more custody, whether they achieved it or not, they wanted the win. But then it's really inconvenient to have the kids. So what they start doing is they start asking you to take them or to make changes in time from the marital settlement agreement, the parenting plan. They start wanting to manipulate that for their own good. So you want to document every time. Now, one thing that I really insist upon with my clients, because I'll help somebody from the moment they think that they're questioning the relationship to making the decision about it, to moving through that, whether it's to stay or to go. If it's to go, I help them move through the whole court process and everything, prepare for that. So if you've been through all of that and now you find yourself at a place where you're co-parenting, and that win that is kind of old news now, there has to be other wins. The hijackal wants other wins. So as I said earlier, they will begin to turn the children sometimes against you, or they will just make it so exciting at the other end. But the hijackal didn't do it to have more time with the children. They did it usually to have you have less. So they start asking you to take the children, and that's why you need an ironclad parenting plan that is part of your divorce, your marital settlement agreement. Ironclad, very detailed. Exactly which days, exactly what times, how the transitions take place, where they take place. Birthdays, holidays, major celebrations, summer vacations, spring breaks, winter holiday, all of that, very, very clear. I was working with a person a while back, and I was telling them about how it was so important to have this very detailed parenting plan. And the person said, oh, no, we can talk, we'll work it out. And I said, no, it won't work like that. You will be very, very sorry. I really need to insist on this point that you have a very ironclad parenting plan. And they said, oh, no, we'll just work it out as it comes along. Okay, the person got back to me after 6 months and said, oh, were you ever right? I say, I'd like to have the kids at this time or that time. Oh, no, it's never convenient. I only get the kids when the other parent doesn't want them. Messy, messy, messy. So number one, very detailed, very specific, to the minute parenting plan. And then your job as the non-hijackal parent is to stick to that. Stick to that for your side. But then you document every time that the hijackal does not stick to it. Now, you never give the hijackal any of your time, but you become very willing to take the children when the hijackal doesn't want them. So you make that very, very clear, that you will absolutely have your time as it's specified. But if they want to use you as their backup person to take the kids, you document that all the time because it demonstrates that they really don't want that amount of custody. So that's a very important clerical activity that you must do. Is this making sense to you, Anne? Maybe you already do have a very good parenting plan. And remember, ask any questions that you like that come to you in the chat, and I will stop and answer them. So we need to have this understanding about the winning aspect, that they just simply want to win in the moment. They want to feel like they won something. They want to feel like they put somebody down. They want to feel like they controlled somebody. They want to feel like they manipulated the situation. So when you have this very specific parenting plan, and you stick to it for your end, but you allow the other parent to ask you if they can leave the children with you, or can you take them for an extra weekend? And you always say yes, but you never swap out the time. You take your time plus any time they give you, and you do it with a smile, and you document it. So very important, because later on a whim, they'll take you to court. You will have the documentation that says, here are all the times it was inconvenient for them to have it. That seems like it's probably 70-30 parenting time, so I would like an order to that effect. So there are things that we have to learn to do. And that, of course, that clerical piece is absolutely important before we get a divorce, and equally important after. So our children, the hijackal wants this power over you. Hijackals never want to give up their supply. So by you not giving in to their demands, they like to play games. Okay, here's a question. So Kristen says, not co-parenting, but wonder what to do when after I said no to our son's request to do something, my husband asks him in front of them, why not let him do that? Or any other time I'm undermined. Okay, good question, because that is a very typical hijackal thing to do in a divorced parent situation. They want to put you on the spot where you get to look like the bad parent. Right? I'm sure that if I could see you, you'd be nodding right now. So the question is what to do when my husband asks in front of the child, why won't I let him do something? Well, what you do is you simply quietly, and you try very hard not to have a reaction to what your ex just did, and you quietly say, because I do what's in the best interest of my child, and that's what's in the best interest of my child. And you say that to the child, because I love you, this is the decision that I've made. And when you can take any overt emotional response out of it, all the better. That's what you want to learn to do. So your husband is trying to make you look bad in front of your son and make you justify your behaviors, and you don't have to. You simply say, because I think it's the very best thing for my son, and that's why I made that decision. You don't get into an argument. You don't have heightened emotions. You just simply state that I think it's in the best interest of my son, and I make all my decisions with as much love for the best interest of my son as I possibly can. Does that make sense, Kristen? You know, basically what the hijackal is trying to do is to make you look bad in front of your child. And so you just remind your child that you're the adult and you have to make the best decisions. And maybe sometimes we don't always like that because it's not exactly what we want, but that's the best thing to do. And so I'd love to hear from you, Kristen, if you've tried that, if that worked for you. And yes, she said. So it's very important to keep the emotion out of this. And I've said it a couple of times now, but I'll just say it again. When you're co-parenting with a hijackal, there is nothing they like better than to get a rise out of you. To have you start to get angry or start to get frustrated or infuriated or annoyed or anything, that is a win to them. That is like them getting in, and they're going to then chip away at things. So if you can learn to be cool and calm and intellectualize what's going on rather than allow it to get into your body and feel it at the moment, you will fare better with co-parenting with a hijackal. Because every time that they think they did a gotcha, they feel better. And then they think they have a little advantage. And when you refuse to give them that little advantage, things get better. And your children begin to understand who you are and how it's consistent. And what you need to do is provide your child with absolute consistency, because a hijackal is never going to be consistent, except that they will consistently be Disneyland parent when they want the child to like them. And then they will consistently disappoint the child by not always doing what they promised, because they went for the win in the moment by saying yes to make you look bad, and then they have reasons why they can't do it. You know, they have to work, there's not enough money, there's not enough time, it would be too much stress, and on and on. Then the child is supposed to understand that disappointment. You be the parent who doesn't disappoint the child. If anything, you underpromise and overdeliver, never the other way around, because that's the way hijackals do that. So Anne says, have you ever seen a narcissist who was relentless with crazy making go away without having to fight in court? I have, and that is more rare, but it has happened when the hijackal has discarded the other parent and gone off and running away with the new supply. So they go off and they're in their honeymoon haze and their wedding days, and they go through all that believing that because they have an agreement, they can come back and pick up the parenting anytime they want. And they can't, because you've documented all the time they didn't show up and they were off doing their self-centered thing, and that they gave up a lot of parenting time. So that's when it does happen, is when a hijackal will fall madly in love and want to show you that he could treat this new person, or she can treat this new person in a way that they would never have treated you, and they're trying to make you feel badly, but not really realizing that they're giving you the upper hand in the parenting for the court. So narcissists really like to be crazy making. They like to keep you in ambiguity and uncertainty and chaos, so it's not too frequent that they will not fight in court, because they're going for the win, and they hope that they will do that. And a little note too, I've said that last week and the last couple of weeks, I think, that hijackals hire hijackal attorneys. They will fire attorneys until they find a hijackal attorney, somebody who thinks and behaves the way they do. And then when you go to court, there's two of them. I remember going to court for a client, which I don't do anymore, but going to court for a client, and the hijackal that she was divorcing was extremely overt, very, very wealthy, had all kinds of money he was stashing offshore and taking it out of the family home and lying like crazy and doing bad things in his business, corrupt things. And in came he and his attorney was the typical hijackal. He was a really big guy. He was wearing clogs, so he made lots of noise as he walked. And he postured, and he was belligerent and all of this. And I was like, oh, no, now there's two of them. And so that happens. So always know that they prefer to go to court because they absolutely believe they know how to win, because they're the smartest person in any room in their estimation, right? I'm sure that you could nod and say, yes, the hijackals always believe they're the smartest person in the room. So Kristen asks, would that be the same to respond if he tried to push a boundary I set? Calmly saying something like, I just can't or won't do that right now. I think it's imperative to hold boundaries. And so you just simply say, without emotion, always as benignly as possible, accurately, genuinely, but benignly, without a lot of emotion. You simply say, I think my boundary was clear and it hasn't changed. Do I need to reiterate my boundary? And if you just say that quietly, no, my boundary hasn't changed. No, things are still the way that I have put it forward. And so when he wants to step over a boundary, or maybe uses the child to try and prevail upon you to change a boundary, again, you have to use both those techniques then. You have to be able to quietly say, no, my boundary is firm and it hasn't changed. And then you also have to be able to understand that to the child that you say, no, don't worry, I have your best interest at heart and I always will. I love you and I know the best thing to do in this situation for us right now. And so you have to keep on going with that vein that you're just very quietly confident that you've got the child's back, you have the child's best interest, you're the one looking out for them. And yes, no, it's not always fun. And yes, no, it doesn't always get to eat ice cream at midnight. But we know why we don't eat ice cream at midnight, right? Because we get a tummy ache, etc. So you just go into explaining and doing the thinking for the child. Remember, the child's brain is not whole and complete till somewhere between 25 and 30 years old. So think about the age of the children that you're thinking about as you ask these questions, because a little person up until the age of 5 or 6, they believe that they make everything happen. And then from 7 to 11 or so, they're beginning to practice using their new parietal lobe and frontal lobe function, and they're beginning to get rational linear thought. And then someone feeds them facts and they put it into the hopper and it doesn't actually come out right. So you have to know all that about the children. Alema, hi, welcome. My attorney is now getting bombarded with crazy emails from my husband's attorney, of course, because hijackals have hijackal attorneys. My attorney called me and asked me what was going on. I said, welcome to my world. Oh, yes, 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 yes. I can give you a high five there, Alema. That's the way they do it. That's how they do it. The barrage, too much to respond to, too many crazy making statements, too many lies, too many exploitations and manipulations of the truth. And they hope that they are going to be able to overwhelm the court with that. Now, remember, when you go to court, the court is getting a snapshot of the relationship and the life of you all in that case at that moment. They don't get the video. They don't know all the things that have ever happened. Courts are very, very busy. They may read the case, they may realize how many times it's come before them, or they may not. So they may be relying on what is directly in front of them and what's being said. And so we always have to take that into account, that we may have to reiterate in court what is actually going on. And so when they want to up the ante, when they want to confuse the court, when they want to run up an attorney bill, when they are super crazy making, because hijackals come from crazy making to super crazy making, kind of a continuum there. If they're in the super crazy making thing, all they want to do is win in every moment. That's what keeps them up at night. How can I win? How can I win? How can I win? And so, absolutely, welcome to your world. I understand that completely. And Kristen says, I know I need to work on not reacting. We all do, right? I should practice daily repeating these sentences you are saying. It is a good idea to mentally rehearse, because then, what you practice is what becomes real for you. So if you do mentally rehearse these phrases, then when your own emotions come into play, you'll be ready to use the phrases. So I highly recommend that you do. And that you get that little turn of mind that, okay, there's going to be a lot of crazy making going on, but I don't have to be part of it. I can be clear, I can be factual, I can be honest, and I can reiterate the truth. No matter how crazy and how many times the hijackal tries to make the conversation spin in court, I can still stay constant and right on it. This is the truth. This is what I experienced. This is how I saw it. And you can just be clear about that. And when you can leave the emotions calm, yes, there are going to be flutters and there's going to be fury and things going on. But the more calm that you can stay and the more factual you can stay, the better things are going to go for you in court. And as hijackals tend to put on a big show in court, then in the beginning, people believe them in court. But over time, that begins to fade. It starts to seem unrealistic and unreasonable. And if you can hang in court long enough, you can often prevail. So do practice, Kristen. Anne said, when I looked for an attorney, I actually looked into court files to see who had experience with fighting my ex's attorney in court. Great idea. Great idea. Do your due diligence. Go and see what these people are up to, how they handle things. I often tell my clients, be the best administrative assistant to your attorney that you can be. You gather evidence. I know it makes no sense. You're paying them all that money and then you have to do the work. But when your attorney is fed all the best information and the complete information from you, and you do research and you do things like you were saying there, and you looked it up and you can even tell your attorney what has gone on, you become invaluable to that process and you become more likely to have your attorney be a winning attorney. So Anne says, my hijackal, I'm assuming, she's mine, is super crazy making. So is his new attorney. Of course. Of course, they love sitting around talking about how they're going to get you, how they're going to pull the wool over your eyes, how they're going to pull the wool over the judge's eyes, how they're going to twist the story, how they're going to make up things and get away with it. Many times for my clients, I end up talking to their attorneys because their attorneys need good language, but they also need good things to watch for in court. And one of those things is something that we call emotional facts. Hijackals love emotional facts, and they tend to throw them around in court. I mean, they throw them around everywhere, but they like to throw them around in court. And an emotional fact is to say something like this. Well, because my ex is such a difficult and unreasonable person, then this happened. And what they try to do is get that emotional fact, which is not a fact at all. You're not an unreasonable and difficult person. They try to get that into the narrative, try to get the court thinking that. And so you have to train your attorney. Here's an example of what I do with the attorneys, is to listen for those and to interrupt at that moment and say, what evidence and reality do you have that my client is difficult, etc. Make sense? Excuse me. And that's why I work with the attorneys often, because we need to have responses to those kinds of things. They work in emotional facts. Alema says, my husband is corrupt and hiding assets around the globe. When does justice prevail? Well, that court case that I alluded to that I was going to court for, the husband was very corrupt, and he was offloading money. His mother lived in Switzerland, and so he was going over there frequently and had his accounts offshore, and he was sending money, and then he was saying to the court that he didn't have any money for spousal support and for child care, and he didn't have all of this. So here's what happened. Now, my client had very little money, and she had me and she had an attorney. And she said to me, I don't know if I can keep going to court. And I said, here's my experience. For a short period of time, maybe a couple of years, you're going to be in dire financial circumstances. But if you can, in fact, hang in with the court, do your due diligence, be on it, document everything, bring in witnesses, do what you have to do. Hijackals have a level of implosion. They get more and more anxious to win, more and more righteous to win, and they take bigger and bigger risks. They make greater and greater lies. They manipulate more and more, and usually they give their hand away. So in the case of that couple, you know, he was saying he couldn't pay for anything, and she was this and she was the other thing, and it was her fault. He had no money. Well, in the end, my client eventually ended up living in her car for a while, but she persisted, and she was a very good sleuth. She was an excellent detective, and she did great note-taking. So in the end, the hijackal, already now at the top of his anxiety level, brought in a former business partner of the two of them to be his witness. And so he was very smug, and he thought, all right, and this is the final straw. I will get her, and I will show the court everything. And as it happened, she had hung in long enough, and he had up-leveled his anxiety, so he was not thinking clearly. He brought in the wrong person. The wrong person told the truth. He went to jail for money laundering, for lying to the court, for several other things. She got a clear settlement, and when he gets out of prison, he's being deported. So justice prevailed. It was extremely difficult for her, but because her mind worked in that way, she was willing to do all the detective work, and by placing things in the right way, saying things in the right way, and prevailing with her attorney, eventually she won. So there was an opportunity, Alema, for that to happen, and her corrupt husband is currently in prison. And his assets hidden were being recollected. He was having to come forth with them, be forthcoming with them, and that was brought into the family assets. And so, yes, she has to wait till he gets out of prison, but she will be fine. I hope you don't have to wait like that. I hope that you can get a better result sooner. But that is what happens, because the more they feel they have power over you in court, the more confident they become. But they also become anxious, like, oh, now there's another thing and another thing and another thing. So those two things working together causes them to kind of not be able to keep the plot anymore, and they overstep and they implode. I've been interrogated by the FBI, Alema says. That is really difficult. But if you have been interrogated, was it about your ex? And was it about his activities? Because hopefully that's the case. And when you present things in a factual way without a whole lot of anger behind it, you can really help them. Ali Marfal, somebody new, welcome to the live stream. With 50-50 parenting being a typical default ruling for custody, have you often seen or been part of helping someone get a post-divorce modification granting more parenting time to the non-hijackal? Yes, I have. 50-50 parenting is kind of the norm. Hijackals will always go for more because they think they'll get it. They often do not, but I have seen it happen. I have horrible stories to tell just as much as I have really good ones to tell. But yes, I have seen it happen. I have helped several people actually go back and get a post-divorce modification because they had kept extremely good notes. And we'd gone back and we had recreated their notes. Even if you can't remember the exact dates, you can talk about exactly what happened and keep good records there. And then the children were of an age where they could also testify about what they wanted. So courts differ sometimes, but somewhere between 10, 11, 12, usually they'll let the children have a say if the children are willing, or you're willing to have them have a say. And that also helps the case. But yes, the more that you have great documentation, the more that the hijackal has made mistakes, and usually they make them thinking that they are pulling the wool over your eyes. They don't realize that you're quite wide awake and taking notes. You can get some modifications, and that can be in parenting time, and that can also be in finance. So it's important. Alema says, I am assuming these are ill-gotten gains. The money that my client's ex had was not ill-gotten. He actually earned it and then told the court that he hadn't made any money in years and he'd taken all the money out. But in actual fact, with a forensic accountant, we were able to go back reconstruct all the company records and everything and find out that there were funds, and then all of a sudden there weren't funds. They'd gone somewhere. So that was also something that had to be done, was a forensic accountant. And of course, these things can get mightily expensive. I understand that, and not everybody can do it. But when you are as informed as you can be, when you go to court and you have good support for going, and you can talk to your attorney about the things that actually matter and be the attorney's best support, then you have a higher chance of getting the things that are in the best interest of you and your children. Because this can be like, the gift, it is the gift that keeps on giving, and you want to get above it. You want to be like, okay, they're going to behave these ways. That's why I wrote that free ebook, How to Spot a Hijackal, so that you have that basic understanding. And that's why I also created the course that's on my website at FOR Relationship Help, HELP.com. You can see all the books and programs and things that are there. There's a navigation tab, and there's a course called Seeing the Cycles. So it's a course that you work through, a personal study course. There's 13 videos and some articles, and then there are worksheets for every video, so that it asks you a lot of reflective questions, a lot of things to help you future pace how you're going to think about this now, the new things that have come to light. So you can go to my website and hit the books and courses, and then the Seeing the Cycles program, so that you really understand what you're looking for, and you look for examples of those things when you're creating your documentation. Oh, hi Joanne, a new person joining us. What's the best approach to deal with young adult children of hijackals in order to help them adjust to young adulthood and spreading their wings when a hijackal parent tries to still control them? Great question, because you have the opportunity of, at that moment, when that happens, now you remember that Joanne said that she wants to help the child spread the wings, and the hijackal parent wants to control them. So at that moment, you get to be the good person. You get to be the parent that they like the most, because you get to say, no, you're an adult now. You get to make choices. But remember, all choices have consequences. I'm here to help you think it through. And so let's talk about that, because that's a very good question. And so when the hijackal parent wants to control, that gives you the opportunity of being the person who wants to nurture and walk through with the young adult. And that is a difficult role, because the hijackal is going to quickly see that he's not getting anywhere. And because you're female, I'm assuming you have a male partner. I may be wrong, but the hijackal will soon see that they need to change their stance. So you have this moment, or a small piece of time, when you can be the one who's encouraging your child to think things through and walk things through with you, that you want to understand their thinking. You want to be that sounding board for them. You don't want to tell them what to do, because that's what the hijackal parent is trying to do. But you want to be the one who is present for them and interested in them and validating their right to make their own choices. And then they will be much more likely to let you have input. And especially if the hijackal is trying to manipulate the situation. That can be a very good situation to be in. It can also be a very difficult one, because the hijackal gets more and more angry when you get more and more close to your child. And the hijackal has to win, so they don't like it when you appear to be winning. John asks, what are you talking about? We're talking about what we've been talking about for the last hour, which is co-parenting with difficult people, the difficult people I call hijackals. So lots of good information tonight. I hope this has been helpful. Does anybody have a final question or comment before we end for today? Obviously, there are going to be lots of other questions. Know that you can always send me a question you'd like me to discuss. So just go to my page on Facebook, Relationship Help Doctor, like the page, and then you can ask me a question there. Or join my group on Facebook, or become a member at Optimized Circles, which is the best way to do it because we're completely off social media. And right now you can get your membership for $5 for the first month at any level, so you can try it out. And I've duplicated everything that's on Facebook, but it's all on my website. So it's very, very private and way far away from social media. And we can talk about things there. And you can tell me what topics you'd like me to discuss on these live streams, and we'll do that for sure. Or maybe I'll do a Facebook Live on a question that somebody sends me. So join in. Go to optimizedcircles.com and join in there, because that's the best possible way to get the most from me without working with me directly one-on-one. Alan Marful says, how should I handle it when Hijackal X presumes I'm the hijackal and suggests it in subtle ways to me directly and to the kids? Oh, that's what they do. That's what they do. Absolutely that. Hijackals love to tell you that you are the one with the problem. And so how you counter that is by simply saying, that's not the way that I see it. I don't believe that that's the case. I don't know that there's any evidence in reality for that, or I find that unacceptable. And again, you say it without a whole lot of emotion. It's just a fact for you. And so you refute it, but you don't refute it vociferously. You refute it by saying, no, that's not my experience. No, I don't think that's true. I have my own therapist and I've checked with that, and that is not the case. You know, you just come back with things that say, no, I've taken care of that. And you just let that stop right there, that you keep that boundary. No, that's not the case. Don't fight with them over it, because they're never going to admit that they're a hijackal. So then somebody has to be wrong, and that will always be you. John says, my mom and dad fight all the time, and I am abused. Well, do you live at home, John? How old are you? That's a very, very broad question. I'd need a couple more details in order to answer that. So if you can just put that in the chat, that will help. All of these things about hijackals, remember, go and get the free ebook, How to Spot a Hijackal, at hijackals.com. That's spelled hijack, ALS.com. Learn what these patterns are. Take the Seeing the Cycles program. Join in at Optimized Circles. Get closer to these things so we can talk more. And that will help, because we have to keep these things top of mind. We've had lives too. We've had parents. We've had upbringing. We have our own issues. Then we get into a hijackal relationship. There are reasons for that. Then we have to learn what has happened in our relationship. Then we end up ending the relationship. Then we have to deal with the children. So many parts of this. John, maybe join us earlier next time. We meet at 6 o'clock Pacific time each Monday evening here, and ask your question then. Until then, I'm going to end today's session. I'm so glad that you were with me. And please invite your friends to come along. Tell people to come along. Know that you can always communicate with me in the membership area or on Facebook on my page, Relationship Help Doctor. And I look forward to talking with you again soon. And in the meantime, remember, you matter. So take very, very good care of yourself. Okay? Bye-bye.